So now I'd just like to introduce we've met the speakers, but I'd also like to have our panelists join us. And we have Richard Beeson, who is the Chief Technology Officer from OSI Soft. We have Timo Klingmeier, who's from Inmation Software in Germany also. And we have Jeff Russell, who is from PepsiCo, Pepsi Beverages, PepsiCo. Anyway, so, and these people are all the experts up here, so I'm sure you'll have a lot of questions for them. And so if you want to we'll have someone go around with a mic. Do you have a mic back there? Or do we have a mic for the audience? Yeah, we have a mic for the audience, so maybe somebody in the audience, or is there an ARC person, another one here that could kind of bring it around to people?
I'll take it.
So Kumar said he'd, okay, Sal's gonna do it.
Yeah, I'll take care.
All right, so is there any questions that someone wants to ask? Like, does somebody have, okay, great, we have one right here.
Thanks, Sal. How you doing? How you doing? Hi, it's Andy MacDonald from Unilever here. Scott, thanks for the presentation. It was really clear. So thank you for doing that. I think, two questions for me. How did you make a start on lysine production? So how did you choose there? And then with the work that you've done, the model's obviously coming out and predicting the end of batch. Have there been any other insights that you've got where you've actually seen some of the input parameters that have affected the batch end time, and have you been able to optimize upstream?
Right. So I would say we chose lysine production because of the perceived opportunity there. The fact that we make so much of it and the margins are so poor right now. We felt it was an opportunity to make a large impact to a segment of our business that really needed it. But speaking more broadly, what I would recommend is that before starting something like this, do a more comprehensive benefit analysis to really get a good feel for where you think the biggest opportunities lie. I'll give you an example. In some of the optimization work we've been doing, we would focus on some of our most energy-intensive unit operations, ethanol distillation, for example, because that seems logical, right? You focus on those places where you're using a lot of energy and incurring a lot of cost because of it. And of course, those are more complex unit operations, and they take more time to implement. As it turns out, there is potentially more value for us on a simple dryer application. If the product out of the dryer is of high value, simply optimizing moisture has tremendous amount of value, and it's a far simpler application. So I would say, understanding the potential benefits and weighing it against complexity of the application is a good way to get started. To answer your second part of the question, we have not looked at anything yet beyond simply optimizing the time of the batch, but certainly things like fermentation efficiency, making sure that we are maximizing the use of our feedstocks would be a logical next step for us.
Okay, thank you. Is there another question, or does anybody else want to comment on that question, like where you get started, or opportunities that you look for? Okay, go ahead. Oh, I'm sorry.
Where you got started, how you chose the area on the work you did on the asset reliability piece. Why did you choose to start there?
Did everybody hear him? He said, why did you choose to start in the asset reliability part of the process?
That was going in my direction. Okay. That you can simply already detract from when you look where your most unexpected losses are.
Okay, is there another question? Okay, we have somebody bring the mic over there. It's hard to get, the room's kind of tight, I think.
Was that you, Gordon?
Yeah, question for Scott, Michael, and Jeff. So you all have the enviable position of bringing new technologies into a plant to plant managers. What are typical pushbacks you get from the site, and how do you overcome those hurdles to go ahead with the change initiative?
I can go ahead and take that one. I put in a lot of new technologies at a lot of Pepsi plants. I've been doing it for quite a long time now, and the biggest problem I see is overcoming the cultural differences that we have. We've got a very large enterprise, as you might imagine, so we've got some really fantastic enterprise dashboarding systems, but almost all of the data that is in those comes from manual data entry at our plant floor levels. So as we begin to automate that, ironically enough, I get pushback from some of the plant directors. Why would I get pushback on that if I'm potentially taking work off their plates? It turns out that when you have a manual data entry system, you have the ability to put whatever you want into it, right? So some of my best running plants, as it's reported, were the ones that pushed back the most. And I couldn't quite figure out why that was, because they were some of my younger plant directors who you would think would be data geeks, right? No, they were data geeks, all right, but they were experts at figuring out how to make their numbers look really good. Not that they were fudging numbers, it's just that they knew how the systems worked. So they knew how to schedule their people versus the production schedule versus kind of hiding downtime, things of that nature, where now when we put in an automated system, you don't have, it's time stamped. You can't say that things happened at different times than they really did. And again, I'm not saying that any of our people are dishonest. They're all just trying to make red boxes green. So well, you really just have to do it anyway. I mean, it's one of those things where you have to convince them what's in it for them, and then what's in it for them is we're going to help them run their plant more efficiently at a lower cost. And so it's not all about making the red boxes turn green. It's about the bigger picture of how do we reduce our cost per unit produced, and how do we do it with less people. And so if I mean, these manual processes I'm talking about, we've done time studies, and we've showed that in an 8-hour day, we've got 10 hours worth of work to do for each employee. So, and then we wonder why people pencil whip it and get fired for pencil whipping it. So it's kind of a nasty little catch-22, if you will.
I think one of the best things you can do to help the adoption of new technology is to really work at establishing a relationship with the operations team. The worst thing you can do is have some great idea for some new technology, do all this development work, and then give it to them and say, here, use this. Right? They don't want that. They don't understand it. They don't understand how they're supposed to use it in a way that's different from what they do today. But if you sit with them and be immediately available when they have questions and kind of engage in an open dialogue with them, I think you'll find that in a relatively short amount of time, they become more open to adopting these new technologies.
And I would like to add, so maybe also asking the question how to bring in technology might be the wrong way around. So you need to solve a problem which is actually on their desk right now. And you need to understand where those problems are, and then the technologies are the measure to solve this problem in an acceptable way for the plant. So there might be situations of higher interest from an enterprise perspective, but in general, you need to see where you can actually help them.
Okay. Does anybody else want to comment on that, or? Okay. We have another question, so.
Yeah, I'll toss out a question, I guess, for anybody that's had.
Why don't you say your name and your company, too?
I'm sorry. I'm Beck Stetson. I'm with Lamb Weston. For anybody that's had experience here, I want to take it down to a little bit lower level on the plant floor and ask something that's been a problem I've grappled with. Whether it's line event data, LEDS data, or OEE, or whatever it is. Have you had experience with bringing data to the plant floor, displaying it? What has worked the best, and how have you determined what are the data that you display and what value you're going to get from that?
Okay. Does anybody want to comment on that, or?
So we had a company come in a while back to create energy management dashboards for us, and did a lot of good work. They did it just like we asked them to do. Everything was based in Pi. All the calculations done in Pi. All the visualizations using Pi Core Site. And if you looked at the visualization they created, there was a lot of information on it, but it was also fairly complex. And it really took a lot of studying to really understand what was going on with it. And I was talking to one of our plant process engineers about this, and he made a comment to me. He said, "We're grinding corn. We're not flying a fighter plane." So I think keeping it simple and really relevant to the operators is what's key to driving adoption.
I might seem very democratic, huh? But again, so I've experience with bringing high performance graphics to the plant. And so this is a long-term effort, which is mainly done via workshops with the individual shifts. And that you have, in the end, a compromise from 4 shifts, and then it's accepted, because everything which is done on a table up front might end up not being used.
We have an interesting, we have kind of almost an opposite problem to what you were talking about there. Our data that's given to the operators isn't detailed enough. So what ends up happening is, and I'm glad this came up, because what ends up happening is a lot of these systems that we end up developing at a big company like a Pepsi, for example, is that it ends up being driven from the top down. So the CEO says, I want 35 KPIs on my desk every day, and it needs to look like this, that, and the other thing. And so then that gets trickled down to the IT group, who then develops it. But then, and they think they're doing a great job, like they want, let's say, for example, what is my efficiency loss due to minor stops in the last day? Okay, well, that's great, but then when the operator who's running the filling machine wants to try to drive some improvements on their filling machine, just knowing how many minor stops they had that day doesn't do him any good. He was there, he knows that. So what helps them is to know, like say a Pareto chart of the top 5 micro stops that they had, and what the total downtime that resulted in that day, something to that effect. But when you just get the summary data from at the top, that looks like the CEO wants it to look, that's not going to help the filler operator do their job better. So what I always maintain is give the filler operator what they need to do their job, focus on what the operator's needs are, and it's a piece of cake then to roll up the summary data, because your real customer that's going to make the process better is the operator.
Yeah, I'd like to.
Yeah, okay,
I'd like to
Richard.
add to that.
Okay.
Sorry?
I was going to say, I said, go ahead, Richard.
Yeah, okay, thanks. Over 30 years ago, when we started in this business, our philosophy was to democratize the access to the data. And honestly, if you can put tools, whether they're visualization tools, dashboarding tools, Excel, and the modern analytics tools, if you can democratize that and get it in the hands of the people, in the hands of the operators, they will very often know exactly what data they want to get a hold of. And as long as the processes are in place organizationally to allow them to do that, we've seen some of the most amazing, both simple and jet fighter screens developed by operators, and those tend to be the bottom-up push. And then that can be matched with more of the corporate view if that's necessary.
Okay. I think we have another question, unless somebody else wants to comment. We have another question. Did you say? Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, Mike Dedzig from ArcelorMittal Dofasco, for Michael and Timo primarily there. If a manufacturing company came to you and said, I see you've done some great work in your horizontal and vertical data integration, and I'm interested in starting that journey, what would be some of your key advice you would have them start with?
Yeah, I'm happy to have a chance.
Okay, Timo. Yeah, good.
Yeah, well, actually, I never thought about that. Because, yes, you're true, we're approached by companies who want to solve that problem of global integration, global real-time dashboarding, leveraging all the systems they have, but they know it. And therefore, they've already detected the value in it, right? At the end of the day, it's much simpler than one might think, and I think this is one thing what Inmation specifically tackled with, is to develop this new architecture, and it has no legacy. It was developed from 2013 on, in a way that the global deployment is as easy and simple and low footprint and minimal invasive as ever possible. Because everything else comes back to you. You cannot deploy complex software like across the globe and think that this is not ending up in a maintenance nightmare, right? So therefore, we start usually quite slow. We just like pick a certain remote site, headquarter connection, one pilot, from the automated intakes to the ready-made dashboards, and let this stand for further decision making. That's easy.
Okay. Anybody else want to comment or? Okay. What about, I have a question though, like, what about the cloud? You know, I know a lot of people are doing the analytics in the cloud because that's an enabler for like these advanced analytics. But the other thing that we're hearing about is the edge and the fog and some of these other applications. What are you guys seeing? Maybe some of the suppliers? Maybe Richard or Timo? You seen anything, Richard, in the cloud and the fog and the edge?
I'm seeing a lot in the cloud.
We're speaking to the mic. I
Yeah,
don't think.
no, seeing a lot there. I think it's very similar to my last comment, and that is we want to get the data into the environment, into the location where the best of breed tools are. So if analytics tools are in the cloud or offered as services, whether it's in Amazon or Azure or HANA or many of the other platforms, we want to get the data out there. So ensuring that it's securely delivered, delivered in context, delivered with quality, that's a huge play. Not sure.
Okay, thank you.
May I add something?
Okay, sure.
Because, I mean, the question is always what is the cloud, and there are many definitions of that. So first and foremost, the cloud is other people's hardware, right? So to demystifying that. So, and I think the benefit of using, in the pure sense of the art, cloud-based systems depends on really like different industries and use cases. So there can be some classic IoT use cases, like if you connect parking spots to an app-based system where people can actually log into a certain parking spot, individual parking spot in a city. That's a classical use case where I would say this is a cloud. If you are a discrete manufacturer and you want to do sub-millisecond sensoring and you have 1,000 machines in a certain site and you want to store 200 terabytes of data a month, then probably the cloud is not for you. And therefore, the cases are quite, there's a certain variety. But at the end of the day, it's only a question which kind of layer, which kind of component runs on that or this piece of hardware, right?
Okay. What about, I have a question about scalability. So what about the scalability of the technology and the ability to scale it up once you have an application? Are you guys seeing that at all, or no? You know, it looked like you had a lot of scalable solutions. Are you doing that, Michael?
I'm not too sure about the question.
Scalability. You know, technology scalability, being able to roll it out to other applications.
So basically, that's something we have in view and we expect, yeah, of course, so that we can, that with the given data resources and storage, connection speeds, etc. So that should be for me a given, that if I can have one compressor, that I can have all compressors brought together in a single space.
Okay.
I mean, from a software vendor perspective, I would say horizontal scalability on all levels of a multi-tier architecture is key for all future systems competing in that enterprise global manufacturing intelligence space. Absolutely. I don't know whether my colleague from OSI is different, but scalability is key.
Yeah, I agree. Horizontal scalability at each tier in the problem. I think Scott's diagram was a wonderful representation of how OSI thinks of that whole data analytic experience. But I think scalability, not just in the management of the data and the access to the data, but in the management of the system itself, especially in a global system, is probably one of the biggest obstacles to adoption and maintenance of the systems and management of the systems. that level of scalability is I think what drives many people to start thinking about how can I leverage software as a service? How can I get out of the business of doing that? One of the gentlemen I was speaking with last night during the reception, he's like, I would just love to be able to buy a valve as a service. I don't care how it's connected. I just want it to work and someone to take care of it for me. So I think that's the kind of scalability challenges that we're seeing.
Yeah, and we are seeing it as a result of like all these things, the emergence of software as a service and new services too. And I think that they talked about that a little bit in the main session. But anyway, I think that's about it, unless someone has like a really great question that they really want to conclude with. But if not, we'll stay around for a couple of minutes and you can ask us questions.
There's one person with a question.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
All right, I'm sorry.
It's a
Yeah.
great question.
Oh, he has a great question.
Yeah,
So,
it's a really good one.
okay, we have a really great question, guys.
I don't know. The question will determine whether it is great or not. My question is to Scott, increasing the lysine production. What analytical engine you have used, or it was more of Six Sigma because you have reduced the variability and improved by 5% lysine production?
So we only use the statistical approach to estimate what the potential benefits were. The engine that was used to drive the predictions, I really don't know. And to be honest with you, I don't really want to know. Right?
So like big data analytics, various tools which are in the market, like analytic engines. So any such engine was used, or it was in-house your development?
Oh, so it was the data platform that we were using.
No, that's
The
what it's
name of the
called.
company was Data.
Data, DHT.
Data, DAT dash,
UH.
was it OH? Yeah, dash OH. Dash UH, I guess it was, yeah.
Dash UH.
Dash UH, actually.
Dash,
Yeah, data. So, okay, well, with that, I'd like to thank all our speakers. They were terrific, I thought, today, and our panelists. And